today's edition of Met News, where we talk all things news and student related. I'm Ryan McKee.
And I'm Shannon Hamill. On the programme today, we will be getting an insight into how some of Hollywood's biggest stars have made an entry into UK football. Ryan and myself will be arguing over whether Christmas is arriving too soon this year.
We'll also have Sinead Killen discussing her role as a mental health nurse, and I interviewed Carl Kinseman to get a behind-the-scenes peek into how your local radio station functions during the pandemic.
But first, our lead story today is that of World AIDS Day, which was on the 1st of December this year. This day is to raise awareness for people living with HIV around the world and to remember those who have sadly died of AIDS-related illnesses.
The stigma and discrimination attached to HIV remains a reality for many people surviving with the condition. The campaign's main aim is to fight prejudice and improve education on the subject.
Here's our reporter, Craig Kirkwood.
John O'Doherty is director of the Rainbow Project, an LGBT support and advocacy group in Belfast. He says the best estimate at present is that around 1,200 people in Northern Ireland are currently living with HIV and AIDS. I asked him to tell us something about HIV and AIDS and what they are.
Basically a virus, a contractable virus, mostly contracted through sexual means or also through the likes of sharing needles.
A diagnosis of HIV or AIDS would have been regarded as a death sentence by many. But with new treatments and better education about the virus, the number of new cases has been steadily dropping.
Thankfully, AIDS diagnoses are very uncommon today, but the longer you're living with HIV without diagnosis and without treatment, the higher the risk of you progressing on to AIDS.
I finally asked about stigmas around HIV, which can make living with the condition that much more difficult.
I mean, there are huge amounts of stigma around someone living with HIV and HIV more generally, relating right back to the 80s when we had those terrible adverts voiced by John Hurt and others, telling people that HIV and AIDS was a death sentence without any support advice for people who are living with HIV. I think the most important thing to understand about people living with HIV is they're not perpetrators of any sort of a crime or wrongdoing against someone else. They are themselves victims of a global pandemic which has been raging for 40 years. Living with HIV and dealing with the stigma of living with HIV is a hugely difficult thing for many people who are living with HIV in Northern Ireland today. I think it's important that people understand how HIV is transmitted, that you're not going to contract HIV off someone from kissing or sharing utensils, sharing a bathroom, or any of these sorts of things. Effectively, how HIV is transmitted is through infected bodily fluids getting into your blood system. So sexual activity, sharing needles, those are the extent of the behaviours that would result in you contracting HIV from somebody else.
If you've been affected by anything in this programme or would like to find out more information, there's contact details on screen now.
Thanks for that, Craig. Next, we'll be taking a trip over the channel to the Welsh town of Wrexham, where some Hollywood stardom has appeared in the town.
As the oldest football club in Wales, Wrexham AFC have been the subject of one of the best feel-good sports stories of the year. A stagnating club with a prestigious history is now beginning to turn the tide.
How are they doing this? With the help of some of Hollywood's biggest A-listers. Our reporter Tom Greer has the details.
The third oldest football club in history has just had a change of ownership.
Like I tell you, it's most definitely upstairs for dancing, baby.
And it's fair to say that the fans are very excited to meet the new owners.
We are humbled and we're already getting to work. Oh, this is really happening.
Being best known for his portrayal as Marvel's Deadpool, Hollywood star Ryan Reynolds has joined forces with the Always Sunny in Philadelphia's Rob McElhenney to become co-owners of Wrexham Association Football Club. The pair completed the takeover on the 16th of November for a reported £2 million. The Wrexham Supporter Trust, consisting of 2,000 members, voted 98% in favour of the decision, following an online meeting with the prospective owners. Many have said that their self-deprecating humour and acknowledgement of the club's sponsor,
Ivor Williams,
quickly engaged many fans. However, Wrexham FC director Spencer Harris has revealed how the new owners have truly cemented their place in the community.
One of our disabled supporters, he put out a GoFundMe because he needed some new shower facilities in his home. And Wrexham fans were starting to donate to that GoFundMe page. And last night, Rob McElhenney put in the entire £6,000 that was required for that. This is the type of people that are getting involved, and they've said they want to be around as long as we'll have them. And I truly believe that it's going to lead to a bright future.
Carrie Harper, a county councillor and die-hard Wrexham fan, stated that the purchase is more than just investing in a football club. It's about feeling seen as a community. If the club starts doing well, then the town will drive on and up again. Fans can be proud to be from Wrexham.
Wrexham living dangerously.
The team currently sitting in the 5th tier of English football has already seen a change in fortune. On the pitch, they've won 3 games in a row since the announcement, and off the pitch, club revenues and shirt sales are rising.
A Wrexham 4th! The back header from Goodliff is not claimed.
Now, sadly, I don't own a Wrexham top, but with all the clubs throughout the world, many people are asking, why choose Wrexham? As winners of the 1982 European Cup, the club's illustrious history is likely a factor that swayed their decision. However, with the news of a documentary in the works, many of the supporters are questioning the pair's true intentions with their club. I spoke with BBC Sport commentator Stephen Watson to get his opinion on the takeover.
It's incredible that 2 Hollywood A-lister stars have taken an interest in Wrexham and try and obviously take this team from the lower leagues of football and give them some global coverage, I suppose, which they have done already. And I think as long as their motivations are real, and they're perhaps not just in it to make a quick Netflix documentary and then bail out. I mean, you don't want people to come into the club kind of, chew them up and then spit them out. You want them to invest in the club for the right reasons. Obviously, the club has a long history. It will have a real community feel to it. So I think as long as they keep the community feel, and obviously you try and take the club and move them up the leagues, it can be a very exciting story. I don't know how hands-on they will be in the actual running of the club, but I certainly think they will make their presence felt at Wrexham. Look at the buzz that it's created already. Imagine if these two turn up and go for a pint down the local pub before they go and sit in the director's box for a game. It'll be absolutely fantastic. But listen, look, it's a good news story. This has been a really difficult year for sport, in particular because of COVID-19. Everyone's going through a very difficult time. Sport behind closed doors is really not a lot of fun. So let's hope get the fans back, get the Hollywood stars to Wrexham with the fans there in full voice. And I think that'll be something to look forward to in 2021.
No matter the future of the club, the fans are secretly confident that in the near future, they will return to the Premier League. Tom Greer, Ment News.
Thanks for that report, Tom. Who would have known that such big Hollywood stars would take an interest in a small Welsh football club?
Our next story is about mental health. A survey by YouGov has found that almost a quarter of Brits find their mental health gets far worse around the festive period, and it is speculated that this number will be even higher with the ongoing pandemic.
Our reporter Owen has spoken to mental health nurse Sinead Killen about how you can keep your mental health good in these challenging times.
30% of people across Northern Ireland have said they are feeling depressed over lockdown. I talked to healthcare professional Sinead Killen to get a first-hand insight into people's struggles. How has COVID-19 affected the way you work?
COVID-19 has had a huge impact on how my working day has changed, how we see patients, how we interact with patients, but not only that there, it's also our mental health and our well-being as well. Due to the government restrictions and social distancing restrictions, a lot of colleagues can be working from home, so you could be in the office with not very many people about. We have to do staggered tea breaks so that ensure that everybody can have a tea break, and we're adhering to social distancing. And really there's not much movement within the office because we don't want to go into too many places for contact trace reasons.
Have these methods affected your ability to communicate with patients?
It has been very hard to communicate effectively sometimes with patients, especially through the first lockdown, because there was total no face-to-face contact unless it was an absolute crisis. So we had to use the telephone contact through that time. Then we were able to learn how to get onto the visual platforms via Zoom desktop client, which with the younger generation is quite good because they're very au fait with internet, have tablets, phones, laptops. However, with the older generation, that just isn't really just as confident in using computers. We are finding that quite difficult.
Have you had to adapt to this challenge?
The best way that we have adapted to the challenges that we are facing within mental health and assessing patients and ensuring that they are offered the appropriate services and meet their needs. We've had to attend a lot of training on COVID, we've had to attend a lot of training on infection control, how to don and doff, so it's putting on your PPE and taking them off in the appropriate ways.
What advice would you give to people suffering from depression during this pandemic?
My advice to anyone that's suffering with depression through this pandemic is to ask for help. When you're feeling low and you're feeling like you're stuck in that wee bit of a rut, you don't have the motivation to get up and get going and do things, because it is very hard whenever there's only so much things you can do about a house, is to reach out to people, ask for help.
We are now facing a possible pandemic of the decline in people's mental health. Ask for help. Don't suffer in silence.
Thanks for that, Owen. Remember to look after your mental health, especially this Christmas, and if you're struggling, don't be afraid to speak out.
Normally we have one of our reporters putting their pet peeves into Room 101, but today it's slightly different. We in the studio, we couldn't agree on whether this topic was suitable to go into Room 101. Ryan and myself have been debating this all day, and we just can't decide, is it too early to start celebrating Christmas?
Now, Shannon, I know you're a very big Christmas fan, and I just feel it's far too early to begin celebrating Christmas. I mean, you wouldn't celebrate St. Patrick's Day this early, would you?
I mean, Christmas isn't just a one-day event though, is it? They call it the Christmas season for a reason. It's Christmas when you start seeing the decorations go up in the shopping centres, and you feel like it's Christmas when you start buying the presents. When you pull the tree down from the attic, it's just that Christmas feeling. It's not just a holiday. I mean, how could you not love the smell of gingerbread cooking in the oven?
I get what you mean. I mean, I'm very partial to gingerbread cookie myself, but some people take it way too far. I mean, the shops have their Christmas decorations up before Halloween sometimes, and that's just far too early in my opinion.
I do have to agree with you there, it is a tad early, but I do think once it gets to December that we're allowed to get into the festive spirit. I mean, the year's saddening and bleak enough as it is. We just need that holiday cheer to lift our spirits.
That's very true, especially in the year where the coronavirus pandemic has just ruled the entire year for us. I think the Christmas cheer would definitely help us.
I mean, I love nothing more than getting into my car and blasting I wish it could be Christmas every day, because personally, I do. It's even better when the radio plays it because you're not expecting it and you just get that Christmassy feeling.
That's very true. That is a tune, and I can see where you're coming from, but we're going to have to pick this up debate another time because I could argue about this all day.
I mean, I could too. Whether you love to hear Christmas music blasting through the car speakers all year round like me, or prefer the opposite like Ryan, there's no doubt that the radio stations have an important role to play during this crisis such as COVID-19.
I interviewed Carl Kinsman, who works at Q Radio, to get a behind-the-scenes look into how Northern Ireland's radio stations are having your favourite festive tunes on this Christmas. Carl Kinsman is the group head of station sound at Q Radio. He has had a successful career both on air and behind the scenes, with numerous awards won in that field. I decided to interview him to get an insight on his history, his passion in radio, and of course, a topic we cannot avoid, how the industry will change and survive during COVID.
Well, I actually started off in a studio in my own bedroom at home when I was about 14, 15, and just practiced a lot, made my own demo tapes. I then managed to get on my local community radio station, Weir FM, which was in Sunderland. I'm from the northeast of England, so it wasn't too far, but 10 miles away or so. And I then became the UK's youngest presenter to get on a national radio station. I was 17 and I got on, which was called Atlantic 252. I then went on to a couple of locals, Metro Radio, TFM. I moved to Northern Ireland and I was on Cool FM in 1996, which is Northern Ireland's #1 radio station. At the moment, I'm on Q Radio. I was a presenter on everything that I've just mentioned. That's what I did until I decided to move into making jingles, which is what I do now, and still to this day. I am making all of the things that you hear between the songs that identify the radio station's name. And it's kind of technical and more kind of suits me because I just love pressing all of these buttons, so it's great. So presenting was my first love. It's what got me into radio in the first place. When I was very young, I listened to other DJs, and I always said to people, when I leave school, I want to be the person on the radio. Do I get paid for that, was my question. And did that for a long time, but I always loved making jingles and pressing the buttons when I'd come off the radio after doing the show. And then there just came a time where I decided to do it full time. 9 to 5. I always said, by the way, that I'd never want to work 9 to 5 because being on the radio, you do 3 or 4 hours, but then that all changed. And so I used to love presenting more, but now definitely more into the technical end of it, yeah. Well, when I was smaller than I am now, which was not that much smaller, I used to watch my dad pressing the buttons. He had all of his hi-fi equipment, and I used to always be standing behind him watching. What's he pressing? What does that do? What is that? And I just always loved technical equipment, and it went from there. If it wasn't for me watching all that, I would never be doing what I'm doing now, so that's the reason. Well, I suppose there's a positive and a negative to this, and normally what you hear from lots of people in radio is the negative first. That's kind of what you hear, but it has been happening already before COVID, and that's the smaller radio stations being bought by the bigger radio stations, and they become part of a big group or big part of one sound, where you've got one team of presenters going out and using all the small stations as an extra frequency. Now, because of COVID, it's just going to make things easier. They have an excuse and an easier way of doing it now. And what will happen in the future is that I reckon, this is my opinion, I think that's going to continue to happen until there's no small stations left. And the positive is, well, you'd like to hope that the standard will be a lot higher, because if you've got a team of presenters, one team rather than 100 teams, then you're going to want to recruit the best. Now, whether that's going to happen on all of the radio stations that are networking, time will tell in the future. Me personally, I think when I was listening to radio growing up, localness was never important to me. It was just, does the radio station sound good? Yes or no. I was a fan of national radio stations. I listened to Radio 1, Radio Luxembourg at the time, which was national, and my own local radio station in my area in the Northeast called Metro Radio was actually the standard of a national. It had a very, very good lineup of presenters, and it presented itself like a national radio station. It was local, but the localness was never one of the reasons why I tuned into the radio. So time will tell. We'll just have to see.
Thanks, Ryan, for that interesting insight into the world of radio production.
That's all from us at Met News today. Thanks to all our reporters and guests on our show today, as well as all of our crew.
Stay safe, everyone, and have a nice weekend.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.